Hey, how's everybody going? This is day 247. We'll do a two-parter here. Talk about Florida in relations to the reparations argument. But first, I am Tom Nyback, and this is 365 Days Towards Racial Change. We are talking about black issues in America, how blacks are getting along, what do blacks need to change, get better with, blah, 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 blah. All of the above. Yeah, we got plenty of what I call outliers. Dr. Anderson, if you read his work and watch his videos on YouTube, he'll talk about the black overclass. We've got blacks doing well. I think you can find examples of any group, any members of a group doing well in America. That's not a big. That's a no-brainer. Okay, yeah. What I'm talking about is a normal experience, a general experience for black people in America. You see, the general normal experience for white people is wealth, prosperity, privilege, access to favor, things like that. Not so for all black people. Black people, have a responsibility to perform, behave, and act in a certain way. Can't be strung out on drugs, be crime, gravitating toward crime and whatnot, and expect to be overtly successful in America without a whole lot of ducking and diving and stuff. Talk about that law-abiding, value-driven black person, still finds America to be resistant, hesitant to creating pathways of wealth, prosperity, privilege for the black individual. Now, having said that, what's the nature? What is the attitude of the black mind? Well, how does it reflect, show up, engage itself in this way, in this manner? What should its attitude be if it knows that it dwells and that it's immersed in this system that's resistant to its success, to black success? Is there any critical thought going on in the way a black person interacts in the world? Do they see a need to be sensitive to these issues out in public and moving about in the world? Interesting. And I have the same kind of burden for the white mind. How does the white mind, privilege, favor, ease of progress, immerse in a system that accommodates white life? These are real things. I'm not saying anything bad. These are just observations, right? I try to keep my complaining and all that to a minimum here in this forum, but although that's very real and valid, well, we bring this stuff out in a historical context, the issues we're talking about here, so what's the white feeling, the white flavor, are there blinders on as white people? I see it out in public sometimes, when I approach a public space, almost I can see the guard go up. Children are held a little closer. Gazes are intentionally averted, while possessions are clung to tighter. This is real stuff that I see out there in public. I try to, I hope I'm not putting anything into it, like I hope my imagination isn't, supporting this thought. Seems very real to me. Uh, this alarm goes up anytime I'm in vicinity, out in public. So that's what I see. But do white people have that much experience and evidence in interacting with black people to behave that way all the time or most of the time? That's what I'm trying to get at. So the white mind. Any critical thought there? Any discernment? Can you tell that when and if a black person might be out to get you, or is it just a default? All the black people are out. I don't know. I'll try not to delve too far into that. Financial literacy among black folks is very critical. They understand how to get your dollars to work. I've been saying it more lately. I would have made different decisions financially. And listen, I've been through addiction, alcoholism, and all this stuff, right? Even all things being equal, if I'd known I've lived this long and that I knew I could get money to work for me later on, I'd be in a totally different space. But I did not factor those things in. That those things weren't readily taught to me. Uh, so if you're younger and black, and I say younger and black because most white people already got that down. Their parents, took them, or at least they had a conversation early in life, pre-teens, or in the early teens. Do this now, and it's going to be easier for you down the road. I know that I've had this conversation with my white friends, and yeah, they're already schooled, educated, conditioned around this area of financial literacy for themselves. Black folks, you get a low marks as far as in general for your family. You're not communicating this stuff. If you're older with children, do with it kind of like my parents did with a sexual education. They give me my sexual education long after I've been sexually active. They would have the talk. You got to do this financially, at least to get you off the hook for any blame for not having the motivation and concern to tell uh, those young men and women under your care about money, how it works, what they should be doing and stuff. So at least you can wash your hands and move on. But you keep silent about this towards your family members that you care for. Uh, I think there's going to be an accountability later on if you don't say anything. Especially if you're doing well financially, if you positioned yourself. I think you have an obligation to talk. Younger people, all I can say is if your parents are silent on that, you know, either they don't have the understanding or whatever, then you got to start now. You heard it from Tomlin's Nyback on YouTube. You had to come to YouTube to get interested in your money, expect to live forever, and they begin to be concerned about how to make your money work for you when you're 110 years old. Do that, and trust me, I'll be dust. Actually, I'm leaning towards cremation, but I'll be ashes. But You'll be set if you listen to what I'm trying to tell you. My parents botched it when it came to that. I'm sorry. My parents get low marks in financial education. All right, enough of that. Um, I'm inspired to do this work by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. He articulates all this stuff much better than me. Check out his videos. I've read 3 of his books. He's got plenty of written material out there. A Black History reader. We are in this pretty heavily lately. I took this book along with me on vacation, took a lot of notes, so I'm just exhausting my notes until we get to story time. I didn't forget about Uncle Tom's Cabin. Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice, and Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America, Powernomics. You can find Dr. Anderson at powernomics.com. Behind you, you'll see the hashtag #US2 symbol. You'll find Black women. I think this is Facebook. Support one another, conversating, having a good old time fellowship, support one another. Check out Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, on the Black Facebook experience. This is the World Wide Web. If you can't find your voice and flavor, do what I did. Start your own and see what happens. I got this little thing going, and I'm seeing my subscriber goes up and stuff. Welcome new subscribers. I do see the numbers go up. Life's kind of gotten away from me, but I promise you I'm going to address, see if I can comment on what's going on there in this channel as soon as I can. And finally, like I said, we have story time. We're going to get back to it as soon as I get through these notes from a Black History reader. We're going to catch up, see what's happening with old Tom and all that. Get back into that. It's very important work there. All right, today was a 2-parter on General Andrew Jackson, and he was actually also the 7th president of the United States. And the question is, it's question 89 in a Black History Reader. How does General Andrew Jackson fit into the call of blacks for reparations? Reparations is, in a nutshell, very shortly, is a black demand requirement that this nation compensate the later generations for the free labor, just enslavement of our ancestors. We get, I believe we have a right to reparations, and a lot of blacks believe this, because we've inherited the poverty, privation, of the struggle of our ancestors. White folks, conversely, have inherited the prosperity, wealth, land, privilege gathered from their ancestors. You've got families in the land. They didn't. A lot of the white families in the land aren't where they are because, boy, they worked and had put on the grind. Some of these families in America are living on, are just perpetuating the wealth that their ancestors stole through free labor, coercion, stuff like that, against black people. So black people say, yeah, we should get a part of that. Now, that's the right thing to do. We're going to look at some of that dynamic specifically today, but that's the reparations argument. General Andrew Jackson comes into this argument as we focus on a specific area of the United States and some aspects of the reparations argument that are pertinent to this whole slavery institution question, no matter where in the United States, this kind of thing happened. You remember, one example, we saw this in Uncle Tom's Cabin, where the one gentleman, you know, um, increased production. He was, his efforts, he was hired out by his master to work at this factory, and he improved the process of the factory. Was a good worker. Either the employers loved him, the white system embraced that kind of thing. While his master was jealous and pulled him back, and it was a slave plantation, treated him cruelly and stuff like that. But the master patented the process because it was kind of like an intellectual property thing, and the master benefited from his slave's effort. The slave got nothing. Eventually ran away and stuff like that. If you're not understanding intellectual property, it is that anything, it's kind of a law, I guess, where anything produced within an employer's space belongs to the employer. I wrote a program did some computer programming for a place that I was working for. And it's not a major program or anything, so not a whole lot to worry about as far as that. But if push came to shove, the employer could say, Tomlin's made this program in our space, using our equipment. It belongs to us, even though Tomlin's used his creativity and made it, and it improved our efficiency and stuff like that. It belongs to us, the employer. That's intellectual property. But it's back same in the slavery day, like as the slaves, any of that production and stuff, the white folks kept the slave alive, but all the profits and all that stuff like that, and investing that wealth, all that's all the white folks are handling that, and building nice houses, securing their families, getting education, and all that. Well, that's the reparations argument. And Dr. Anderson, he's in this question 89, he's looking at some of the pieces of that argument, and where General Andrew Jackson and his efforts down there in Florida is kind of a test case for that. See, a lot of these elements are consistent throughout America at the time. Florida was initially owned by Spain. It was a Spanish territory, but it was loosely owned. Spain didn't put a whole lot of energy into keeping it and stuff like that. They couldn't get their own people necessarily to colonize there, settle there. So they opened it up. They say, hey, anybody comes here is going to be a Spanish citizen. Blacks loved it. Now, blacks to the north, and then the Carolinas and areas like that were like, yeah, if we can get to Florida, we could be free. So blacks were escaping. That is how actually Georgia was created. Georgia was created to be a territory, to be a buffer against these escaping slaves. If it had not been this area between Florida and I guess South Carolina, I don't have my map in my head at this moment, it was problematic. So they create Georgia to be a buffer to slow down this exodus, of black slaves heading to Florida. So they organized that Georgia territory. The blacks down there, they developed kind of that northern border area of Florida, and it just made it prosperous, cleared land, and all that, working with the Seminole Indians down there. Now, Andrew Jackson, um, which is against, he went against the law. We're going to talk about this more tomorrow, but we're just piecing the argument together, a good outline. 1812 and 1818, he invaded Florida. That was against Congress wishes. He violated international boundaries by going in there. But he captured and killed blacks, Seminole Indians. Um, some of the Indians had blacks as slaves. It was really hodgepodge of the community down there. And he went out down there and he's scooping up these people indiscriminately, though, and taking them back north and whatnot, uh, uh, back to white controlled slavery. White people were threatened by um, this free black activity to the south of them in Florida. Not a whole lot of pushback from Spain. Dr. Anderson doesn't say, well, now that Spain rallied troops and all this stuff. Spain, like we said, it's a loosely held territory. We look at our map today, Spain had more interest in South America. Mexico definitely comes into play and stuff like that. But Spain didn't, just by going your geography, you could tell Spain just went south, had an easier time south. And it's interesting, the white European community focused and decided to really congregate in that United States of America territory there, sandwiched in. And, I gotta say, even geographically, it was like quite the land grab. You know, maybe I've not been abroad much. I've only been out of the country once, but you know, nationally, the weather isn't that extreme, and there's a good balance in this nation uh, as far as our geography. So it's a good way. French up north in Canada, that's got to be uh, pretty intense winters, and then summers in Mexico. That's got to be pretty intense. But America seems to have a balance. The United States has a balance geographically. Uh, so he did that. Now the whites were threatened by these uppity free blacks in Florida. So Jackson's invading. He's not getting any resistance from Spain anyway. They're whatever. So Jackson, along with Creek Indians, are invading, murdering, taking, uh, enslaving whoever. We're going to talk a little bit tomorrow about some of the black people were citizens. He would say, well, his argument might be, well, we're just recapturing escaped black slaves. That's who they are, but not all of them were. For some were, but many were free, actual free blacks. Seminoles were dark, considered black, things like that. Um, Jackson's efforts angered Congress. Congress trying to take him to court, give him court martials and stuff. But the wealthy Southern white owners, plantation owners, blocked it, used their resources. They probably treated Andrew Jackson as a hero. And at this time, the white thinking for this black enslavement into perpetuity formed, really coalesced at that point. And they said, well, you got to get those blacks out of Florida. This is the white slave owners saying, you got to get those blacks out of Florida because, we own them, and so they belong to us. They're our property, and this ownership is going to pass on to our children and their children. Therefore, enslavement gets passed on to the black children and the black children's children, into perpetuity, generation upon generation. And this thought really coalesces at this time and becomes apparent, explicit in the language, in the motivation for invading Florida and taking these black people captive, murdering them, and all this stuff. It's into perpetuity. Now, the reparation argument is based on that. It says, okay, if that is true, that you benefited and profited from black people in that way over time, then you owe those generations of black people something. You prospered, you benefited, right? It wasn't like, the black person is born free and can go on with their lives even though they have slave parents. No, that everyone born, every black person born to the slave was a slave, and that there was nothing for it. And the white folks, the white system, continued to benefit from black existence. Period. The blacks weren't criminals. They weren't enemies of the state, captured in war, anything like that. They just were born to black parents. Right? And this perpetual slavery was their lot, just as perpetual ownership was the lot of white folks. So there's some of the foundation for the reparations argument. Andrew Jackson later became president, 1829, 1837, 2 terms, did very well. It's interesting. He's pretty prominent in a book I just read by G. Edward Griffin, The Creature from Jekyll Island, where Andrew Jackson was one of the high-ranking, high-profile people in America to resist central banking and recognizing its potential to wreak havoc, create chaos in the nation. Which was very popular in his time, in his day, which probably got him those 2 terms. He presided over the Trail of Tears, 1830, or around there, I think, where they finally went in, gathered up. The story is that all these Indians, Native Americans, were scooped up out of the southeastern part of the United States and moved to the west of the Mississippi River. What history doesn't tell us is that many were black, up to upwards of 40% were black people getting moved out there that way. And you said, well, where's those black people? You got a lot of people out there, moved out there. Well, think black people just probably did not find the ready support for what they're going through in America at the time. So I guess I was thinking off the top of my head here is that black people just were not protected, you know, and so may possibly became easy prey for other dominant groups. It's survival at that point, and you can see worldwide darker skin is a challenged, uh, it's very challenged presence in the world. What maybe why you don't see a lot of black folks out west at this time, and why the history books favor Native Americans being oppressed in this way, and just totally skips out of the blacks that were traveled right along with upwards of 40%. Southerners came in, swooped in, did their land grab to all this developed northern Florida land. Part of it became part of Cotton Belt, even at that time. We want to talk more about this tomorrow, but there's a quick, brief outline. We're going to dig a little deeper on some portions of that tomorrow. I'm Tomlin Snyback. Thanks for hanging out with me for day 247. I'll see you tomorrow.